faith is one of the most misunderstood things in the Christian walk. I know that sounds hard to believe, but it is. And if you listen to this and meditate on what I'm about to tell you, it's going to really answer a lot of questions for you, and I think really help your growth. This is the basics of being a child of God, part 20. So a lot of times when you say faith, I don't even like to say faith because it's been so, mystified and all of that stuff. I like to say trust. And what most Christians have is a trust in Jesus to one level or another, that he's going to let them into heaven one day. And that's what they call faith. Like, faith for everything is Jesus is going to let me into heaven one day, and he existed. Exists, excuse me. He walked the earth is what I mean. But that's generally what they're saying. Okay, so a lot of times here in the Bible Belt, when I go to pray for people, and let's say they get healed or something, they'll say, hey, I don't understand this. I've prayed about this, for months or weeks or days or whatever, and I haven't seen any change. What's the difference? How come when you prayed it happened? And, the unfortunate truth is it's about faith. It's about believing that's going to happen. Like, well, I got faith, or sometimes they won't let me pray for them at all. They'll say, I am saved. I have faith, But if you ask them, if you go, okay, well, do you have faith that this person's leg is going to be healed right now? Well, now that's up to God, brother, we can't. Okay, you don't have it. You don't have that trust that it's going to happen right now. You say, maybe it will, maybe it won't. And some people will just say, hey, maybe it's not going to at all. But the trust, the faith for God to do this certain thing is just simply not there. Now, one of the best biblical examples is when Peter was walking on the water. If you don't know the story, there was a storm. The 12 disciples, they were all in a boat. They see Jesus come walking across the water, ice skating across the top of the storm on the water. Peter says, hey, Lord, if that's you, tell me to come out there and meet you, basically. And and Jesus says, yes, come on. And so Peter gets out of the boat. He starts walking on the water. He looks, he sees the wind and the waves, and he's like, oh man, this is impossible. How is this happening? And he got worried about that. And the Bible says he starts to sink. We'll come back to that starts to sink later. But he called out to Jesus. Jesus reaches down, saves him, puts him back in the boat, and everything's okay. But what happened there, he had this broader faith, like a lot of people have, of that Jesus is the Son of God. That's great. You should have that, right? He had that broader faith that, he's powerful. He's all powerful. He's the Son of God. He's God in the flesh, and that's why he said, hey, you tell me to come out there and I'm going to do it. He had that overarching faith, so to speak. But when he got out of the boat and he started putting, one foot in front of the other, it's like each step was a miracle. Each second he was on that water was a miracle. It wasn't like, if you got a headache and we pray and it leaves, that's you might say that's one step of faith. It left. He was just doing multiple things. And so he got his eyes, he started using his natural human reasoning. A lot of times in the Bible, you'll see that referred to as the flesh. It's what you can deduce, what you can take in through your five senses and see. He was a fisherman. He'd been at sea a lot. He knew, hey, this is bad. I'm in a bad spot. I'm out here away from the boat. This isn't good at all. And so his faith, his unbelief started to come in and just negate or just do away with his faith. And it says he started to sink. And that's usually how it goes. If you do have faith and belief in something, it's like it gets chipped away. It gets chipped away and it slowly, starts to sink. If you were standing on top of the water, I don't think you would start to sink. You would sink. But he still had that overarching, that broader faith that Jesus was the Son of God, that Jesus was God in the flesh, and he called out, hey, save me. Jesus was out there walking on the water too. And so he saves him, right? So that's kind of what we see. It's sometimes, again, we can get that confused. So you're trusting God that he's who he says he is. He's going to get you into heaven, all of that stuff. But are you trusting him for these other things, And so it's not correct to say, yes, I have faith that God is going to heal me, when you say, yes, I have faith, but maybe he will, maybe he won't. That's not true. You don't have it. Just that's one thing we can start with. And I had to go through this too, and I still do. Things I'm struggling with, a lot of times that I see promises in the Bible for, but I'm not seeing the full manifestation of it in my life. I have to go to God and say, hey, God, I'm not, I feel like I am. I feel like I'm trusting you, but apparently I'm not, because we know you're not a liar. So if it's between the weak link is you or me, I'm going to say it's me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that. So a lot of times we just have to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we just have to look at what we're saying. Is that true that you have faith in God, for this healing or whatever? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, right? And so, hey, if we can recognize that, then we can start to work on that, spending time with the Lord, spending time in his word. I've talked about these things about how to get rid of unbelief and boost your faith. But if it's an emergency situation, maybe you don't have time for that. That's, hey, you put that request on my prayer request video or something and try to, sometimes it has to happen right now. We don't have time for all of that, right? That's just the world. That's just reality. See, a lot of this too, a lot of the teaching, the people that do the teaching are the people that sat in the boat. They never got out on the boat. They never seen the miracles of God. They never seen the supernatural stuff happen. So they're back there sitting in the boat. They've never stepped out. They've never fell on their face or anything like that. And they're like, oh, God, obviously God wanted Peter to sink, and that he's going to learn a great lesson in that. So it's like Jesus tricked him. Come on out, but, you're not going to last long in this. And so they teach you all of these weird things like, well, it was God's will to sink Peter, and you just don't, and it gets responsibility off them. It gets responsibility off of you, and it's just whatever happened, and it just makes you feel good. Like, that's what they would have told Peter. Like, well, hey, God, God he's in control. You're learning a good lesson by this sinking, They wouldn't even call, if Peter couldn't talk, they probably wouldn't even call Jesus to help him. They're like, well, that's what he gets. That's what he deserves. That's a good lesson for us to learn from, people. And so they spin reality to make everybody comfortable and feel good and feel super spiritual when really they're not. So I think that's also why Jesus says, I wish that you were cold or hot. We could say Peter was hot. He made a mistake, but he went out there on the water and he followed Jesus in his footsteps very, in a very obvious, profound way, right? But, when he started to sink, he didn't say, oh, this is all just ordained by God, and I'm going to learn a lesson here. I'm sinking. He did call out for Jesus to save him. Same with somebody that was maybe, let's say, an atheist that's watching this whole scene through binoculars on the shore. He would say, hey, that guy's sinking. Let's call the Coast Guard to come out there and get him and, throw a life preserver out there. Peter was based in reality. Oh, I'm sinking. God, save me, help me. The person in the Coast Guard, the atheist watching through the glasses, he's trying to save the guy. But the people over in the boat, the religious leaders, I'm not saying the disciples were saying this. Please get what I'm saying. But the religious leaders, a lot of them of today would just, well, it's all ordained by God. Whatever will be, will be. They're not going to lift a hand to do anything to help. Okay? So they're neither hot nor cold. And so there's no growth there. It's almost like you deny reality or something. Okay, even when they're saying it's all the will of God, it's like, well, hey, there is responsibility on both ends. But enough said. Hopefully, go read that in the Bible. Go read that passage in the Bible. Meditate on it. Again, this is from me reading the Bible, but also putting it into practice. Praying for the person with the deaf ear and not seeing it open. And also praying for the person with a deaf ear and seeing it open. Praying for the baby in the womb to come back to life and it didn't happen, and praying for the baby to come back in the womb and it did happen. So I've been on both sides of all of this stuff. And this is the greatest thing that helped me the most, I think, in learning about faith is Peter walking on the water. Okay, I hope that helps. If this isn't clear or anything, please put comments or questions down in the comment section. God bless you.